My sister sold her home to fund a dream vacation, and now my parents want her family to move into my place. So here's the situation. I've been living in this house for the past decade, slowly paying it off. Finally, I can proudly say it's mine. It's a simple 3-bedroom house. Nothing extravagant, but it's mine. You know that feeling of working hard for something and finally being able to say, "Yeah, I did that"? That's where I am. I don't have fancy decorations or a huge backyard, but it's cozy, peaceful, and most importantly, it's my sanctuary where I can unwind without any worries. Then, there's my sister Jenny. She's 29, married to Alex, who's 31. They're the free-spirited type, constantly talking about how everyone's wasting their lives in the 9-to-5 grind while they're living their best life or whatever. They've always been like that since they got together, always planning some grand escape from the rat race. Honestly, I never thought they'd actually follow through. Everyone dreams about quitting their job and traveling the world, but then you realize bills are real, right? But not Jenny and Alex. Nope, they're the kind who actually did it. They sold their house, the one where their 2 kids, Emma and Lucas, have lived their whole lives and decided to travel the world for a year. Yeah, you heard that right. They sold everything for a dream vacation, thinking the booming market would help them make a fortune off the sale. They figured they'd live off the profits, work odd jobs here and there, and stretch it out for a full year, moving from place to place. So I'm watching this unfold from my little house thinking, good for them, but this is a terrible idea. They've got 2 kids, Emma's 7, and Lucas is 5, and traveling with children isn't the same as spontaneous backpacking through Europe. There's a lot of planning involved, but they shrugged it all off, saying they'd figure it out along the way. I thought, okay, it's their life, whatever. Fast forward a few months, and I'm just relaxing at home, probably watching TV, when Jenny calls. I hadn't heard much from her since they left, aside from the occasional Instagram post about how amazing everything is, with pictures of them eating weird foods in random places. So I assume it's going to be another one of those calls where she brags about how great things are. But as soon as I pick up, I can tell something's wrong. Jenny sounds really stressed, and she starts telling me how things didn't go as planned. Apparently, they burned through their money way faster than they expected. Within 2 months, they were practically broke. Turns out, traveling the world is expensive. Who would have guessed? They stayed in nice places, ate out at restaurants, and lived it up like they had endless money. But when you're not working and still spending, the money runs out fast, especially with 2 kids. Hostels and cheap Airbnbs are fun until you've got 2 tired, hungry children who need a stable place to sleep every night. Now, they're stuck. They can't keep traveling because they're out of cash, but they don't want to buy another house yet. So guess what? They asked if they could move in with me. Yep, Jenny, Alex, and their 2 kids all in my 3-bedroom house. And here's the kicker: they want to stay rent-free. They didn't even offer to help out, just straight up asked if they could live with me for almost a year while they figured things out. I didn't know how to respond at first. I mean, it's my sister and I care about her, but this is my house, my space. I didn't spend 10 years working my butt off just to let 4 extra people come in and take over. Plus, I have my routine. I like my peace and quiet. I can't even imagine what it would be like with 2 little kids running around, not to mention the mess. So I told her, look, Jenny, I love you guys, but this just isn't going to work. The house is too small, and I don't want that kind of disruption. I even offered to help them find an affordable rental nearby, or give them some money for a couple of months to help them get back on their feet. But that wasn't enough. Jenny got angry, like immediately. She started calling me selfish, saying I didn't care about family and that I was jealous of their adventurous lifestyle. Jealous? Really? Now I'm getting mad too. This isn't about jealousy or not caring about family, it's about boundaries. I don't owe them a place to live just because they made some poor decisions and didn't think things through. I get that life doesn't always go according to plan, but they sold their house without a backup plan, and now they want to make their problem mine. And it gets better. After Jenny blew up at me, she got our parents involved. My parents live in a tiny apartment, so they can't take in Jenny's family, but instead of seeing my side, they're pushing me to let them move in. My mom starts telling me how family helps family and how I should be more understanding of Jenny and Alex's situation. She says I don't understand the value of experiences and that I should be more supportive. Supportive? I did offer to help. I offered to find them a rental or cover part of their expenses for a few months. But that's not enough. They want the whole package: free rent, my house and my space for almost a year. And the worst part is, they're not even planning to settle down. They're still talking about taking occasional trips if they find cheap deals. So basically they want to live rent-free in my house while still being free-spirited travelers whenever they feel like it. How does that even make sense? Now, I'm sitting here trying to figure out how to deal with the fallout. Jenny's not talking to me, my parents are mad, and even some of our mutual friends think I'm being too harsh. But I don't think I'm in the wrong here. It's not like I'm abandoning them when they're down. I offered to help in other ways. I just don't want them living in my house rent-free for 10 months. So after that awkward call with my sister Jenny, I had a feeling things might get tense, but I wasn't prepared for just how chaotic it would become. I thought maybe I could put my foot down, say no, and that would be it, case closed, move on. But no, Jenny and Alex decided to show up at my house about a week later, without any warning, which already made me feel uneasy. It was a typical Saturday morning. I was enjoying the quiet, and then the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Jenny, Alex, and the kids standing there, looking hopeful, like they expected me to save the day or something. Meanwhile, I'm standing there thinking, oh boy, here we go. I knew what they were going to ask, but I didn't expect them to show up like this, acting as if it was already a done deal. Jenny starts with some small talk, asking how I've been and how work is going, but I could feel the tension building. It was obvious they weren't there just to catch up. It was one of those moments where you know someone's trying to butter you up for a big favor, and I was just standing there trying to be polite while mentally preparing for what was coming. Finally, after what seemed like forever, Alex cleared his throat and said, "So Brian, we've been thinking about what you said on the phone then." Of course, Jenny jumped in because she's clearly the one in charge. She said, "We know you didn't think having us here would work, but we really believe it can. It's just 10 months. We won't be any trouble. The kids will stay out of your way, and we'll keep the place clean." I stood there for a moment, unsure of how to respond. Let's be real, there's no way 2 kids are going to stay out of my way in a house this small, and the idea that they won't disrupt my life is ridiculous. But I tried to stay calm because I didn't want to explode right away. I asked, "What's the plan? I mean, after the 10 months, what happens? Are you planning to get another house? What about work?" Jenny and Alex glanced at each other like they hadn't really thought it through. Then Jenny said, "We're still figuring that part out. We might go back to traveling if things work out. We've been looking at cheap flight deals, and there's a chance we could get back on the road by the end of the year. We just need a place to regroup, somewhere to stay while we plan our next move." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Not only did they want to crash at my place for 10 months, but they were still talking about taking more trips. Really? You're broke, you have 2 kids, and your grand plan is to continue living this fantasy life of bouncing from place to place. I didn't even know how to respond to that. Where's the logic? So I politely told them, "Look, I understand you're in a tough spot, but I'm just not comfortable with this. It's not that I don't want to help, but my house isn't set up for this. I have my own routine, and honestly, having you here for 10 months wouldn't work for anyone. The house is too small, and there's just not enough room." That's when Jenny's whole demeanor changed. She went from hopeful to angry in about 2 seconds. "Are you serious?" she asked, crossing her arms. "We're family, Brian. Family helps each other. You've got all this space, and it's just you living here. What's the big deal?" Now I was getting frustrated. I mean, I get that they're stressed, but it's starting to feel like they think they're entitled to my space just because we're related. I tried to stay calm and explained, "It's not just about space, Jenny. It's about my life too. I worked really hard for this house, and I need my peace and quiet. I'm happy to help you in other ways, but having you all live here for almost a year, I just don't see that working." At this point, Alex tried to play peacemaker, sensing the rising tension. He said, "Maybe we can work something out. We could help around the house, do chores, cook meals, whatever you need. We'll be out during the day, and you won't even notice we're here." But of course I'd notice. How could I not? 4 extra people in my house? Yeah, I'd definitely notice. And the idea of them being out during the day didn't even make sense. They've got 2 small kids and they're broke. Where are they going to go? It's not like they can afford daily outings with the kids. I shook my head and said, "I appreciate the offer, but no, I just can't do it. I'm sorry." That's when Jenny lost it. She started ranting about how I've always been stingy and how I don't understand what it means to really live. She said I've never taken any risks, that I'm just a boring guy with a boring life, and that I'm probably jealous of their adventurous lifestyle. Yep, she went there. Now I was getting angry, but I kept my cool and said, "Jenny, this isn't about jealousy. It's about boundaries. You chose to sell your house and live this way, and that's fine. But now you're asking me to take responsibility for it, and that's not fair." She wasn't having it. "We wouldn't be asking if we had any other choice," she said. "You think we want to be here begging for help? No, but this is what family does. They help when things get tough. I thought you of all people would understand that." At this point, Alex just looked uncomfortable. staring at the floor while Jenny continued her rant about how selfish and heartless I was. She went on about how their travels had inspired them, and how they didn't want to settle for the typical suburban life. And all I could think was, yeah, but don't you need money for that? Finally, I said, look, I'm sorry, but my answer is still no. I can't have you guys living here. It's just not going to work. They stormed out after that, with Jenny muttering about how they'd figure it out without my help. And honestly, I was relieved. I didn't want to keep arguing, but I could already tell this wasn't over. And, as it turned out, it wasn't. The situation got way worse after they left. Update 1, after Jenny and Alex stormed out of my house, I thought that would be the end of it. I figured they'd cool off, come to their senses, and realize that they were the ones who messed up. But wow, I was way off. Just a couple of days later, the real fallout started. I was at home, going about my usual routine, when my mom called. Normally when my mom rings me up, it's just to check in or remind me to eat more vegetables seriously. But I could tell right away this wasn't going to be one of those calls. She started with, "Brian, we need to talk about Jenny," and that's when I knew I was in for it. Apparently, after leaving my house, Jenny went straight to our parents and gave them her sob story. She told them all about how I refused to help them out when they were down, of course making it sound like I was the bad guy. My mom's voice was dripping with disappointment, like I had done something awful. She said, "I don't understand why you wouldn't help your sister, Brian. They're in a tough spot, and family is supposed to help each other." I tried to stay calm, but internally I was already irritated. I explained to her what really happened, how I had offered to help them find a rental and even give them money to get back on their feet, but they wanted to stay at my place rent-free for 10 months. I also told her how their plan was absurd, how they spent all their money without thinking it through, and now they expected me to bail them out. But of course my mom didn't see it that way. They made a mistake, Brian, but they're still family. You have the space. It wouldn't be forever. Just until they figure things out. Here's the thing, my mom has this way of making you feel guilty without even trying. She's not harsh, but she drops little comments that make you feel like you're failing as a good son or brother. It's exhausting, but this time, I wasn't letting it get to me. I told her straight up, "Mom, I'm not doing it. I love Jenny, but she and Alex need to take responsibility for their decisions. It's not my job to let them move in, because they didn't plan ahead." She didn't like that response, but for the moment she let it go. I thought that would be the end of it, but no, this was just the beginning. The next day my dad called. Now, my dad's a different story. He's not the type to guilt trip you, he's more of the tough love type. When he's upset, you'll definitely hear about it, and there's no sugarcoating. "Brian," he started, "I hear you've been giving your sister a hard time." I tried to explain my side again, but he cut me off, accusing me of being selfish and saying that I've always had it easy. "Yeah, right, like working my butt off for 10 years to pay off this house is easy," he kept going, ranting about how Jenny has always been the one taking risks, living life to the fullest, while I've just been sitting here, comfortable and not doing anything exciting. Basically, he was calling me a coward for not letting them stay, acting like I was some boring guy who didn't know what it meant to really live. At this point, I was getting heated. I told him, "Dad, this isn't about being adventurous or not. It's about them making a bad decision and expecting me to clean it up. I worked hard for this house, and I'm not going to let them come in and take advantage of that." But he wasn't having any of it. He kept insisting that I was the one in the position to help, and that I was failing as a brother by not stepping up. It felt like he had taken everything Jenny said and was running with it, making me out to be the villain in this whole mess. And honestly, that stung. I've always been the responsible one in the family, the one who worked hard, kept his head down, and did what needed to be done. But now it seemed like none of that mattered. After that call, I was fuming. It felt like I was being attacked from every angle. My parents were both upset with me. Jenny was likely telling everyone I was a heartless jerk, and sure enough, that's exactly what was happening. A few hours later, I got a message from one of our mutual friends. Let's call him Tom. Tom's a good guy, but he's also friends with Jenny, so he'd heard her side of the story. He texted me, "Hey man, what's going on with you and Jenny? She says you're not letting her family stay with you, even though they're in a tough spot." I explained my side of things, how it wasn't that simple, how they were asking for way too much, and how I'd already offered to help in other ways. Tom, being the reasonable guy that he is, listened, but then he hit me with, "Yeah, but it's just for a little while, right? You could tough it out for 10 months. It's family, dude." And now I'm just done. It's like everyone has forgotten that I have the right to say no, like my house isn't even mine anymore, it's just a resource that everyone thinks they're entitled to. I'm frustrated because no matter how I explain it, everyone seems to think I'm the unreasonable one. They all keep acting like it's no big deal for me to let an entire family move in and completely disrupt my life for almost a year. Then the final blow came when Jenny herself texted me. It wasn't a long message, but it hit hard. She simply said, "I can't believe you've turned your back on us. We really needed you." I sat there, staring at my phone, feeling torn. Part of me felt guilty, like maybe I should have just given in to avoid all this drama. But another part of me was still standing firm. I know I'm not in the wrong here. It's not my fault they made poor choices, and it's not fair for them to dump their problems on me just because I have a house. Still, the guilt is eating at me, and I'm starting to wonder if I could have handled things differently. Maybe I should have been softer in my response. Maybe I should have been more understanding. But at the same time, I know that giving in would have only enabled them to keep making reckless decisions, thinking they could always rely on someone else to fix things. So now, I'm stuck. My parents are angry, Jenny's furious, and even some of our friends are questioning whether I did the right thing. And me, I'm just trying to hold on to the fact that I set a boundary for myself, even though it feels like the entire world is telling me I'm wrong for doing it. But this is far from over, because as much as I want to walk away from the drama, Jenny isn't done yet. Update 2. After all the calls and messages, I thought maybe if I just ignored things for a bit, it would all blow over. Maybe Jenny and my parents would calm down, realize I'm not the bad guy, and we could all move on. But no, things didn't calm down, they got a whole lot worse. It all started with my mom. She kept trying to be the peacemaker, calling me every few days and saying, "Brian, you've got to help your sister. You don't know what it's like to be in her shoes, struggling with kids." She repeated the same thing over and over, and each time I had to remind her that it's not that I don't want to help, it's about how much they're asking for. They're not about to be homeless. I offered other ways to help, but nothing I said seemed to get through. Then, one evening, there's a knock at my door. It's Jenny and Alex, no call or text beforehand, just showing up like it's no big deal. I open the door, and there they are, standing there with these worn-out, desperate looks on their faces, the kids clinging to Jenny's legs. Right away, I get that sinking feeling in my stomach, knowing this is going to be awkward. Jenny's holding some papers, and I'm already bracing myself for what's coming. Without wasting time, Jenny says, "Brian, we need you to reconsider. This is serious. We've looked everywhere, and there's nowhere affordable. Rentals are too expensive, and we can't even afford a deposit." She waves the papers, apartment listings, most of them crossed out in red ink. I glance at them, but I'm already thinking about how I'm going to respond. I'm not in the mood to argue, but it's obvious they aren't taking no for an answer. Before I can get a word in, Alex speaks up, and this time he's not the calm, quiet guy from before. He's frustrated, almost angry. "We've tried everything, Brian. We're out of options. You have this whole house to yourself, and you're just sitting on it while we're struggling. You really can't let us stay for a little while now." I'm getting irritated. And I've had this conversation a dozen times, and every time I say no, they just keep pushing. So I reply, "I've already told you, I'm not comfortable having 4 extra people in my house for almost a year. I offered to help you find something else. I even offered money, but you're not listening. I can't let you move in. That's final." But Jenny wasn't giving up this time. She stepped closer, and her voice started trembling like she was about to cry. "Brian, we have nowhere else to go. The kids are exhausted. We're exhausted. We're not asking for much, just a roof over our heads for a little while. We'll pay you back when we get back on our feet. Please, you're our last hope." I looked at Emma and Lucas, and they were just standing there, confused. They probably didn't understand what was happening, and honestly, that made me feel terrible. It wasn't their fault their parents had made bad choices, but I couldn't let guilt drive me into making a decision I'd regret. I had to stand firm, or this would turn my life upside down. So I took a deep breath and said, "I'm sorry, but I can't. I know it's hard, but this isn't the answer. You need to find another solution." And that's when Jenny snapped. She went from sad to furious in an instant. "You're unbelievable," she shouted, her voice echoing in the hallway. "You're just sitting here living comfortably while your own family is suffering. I can't believe how heartless you've become. You've changed, Brian. You're not the brother I grew up with." Her words hit like a punch to the gut, but I was too angry to let it get to me. I shot back, "I haven't changed. You're the one acting entitled, thinking you can just show up and expect me to bail you out because you didn't plan ahead. I didn't cause this mess, you did, and now you want me to fix it for you? That's not how this works." From there, the argument spiraled. Alex jumped in, accusing me of always being the selfish one in the family, saying I've never been there for them when they needed me. He started bringing up stuff from years ago, random things that didn't even matter anymore, like how I didn't lend him money for some business idea he had back then. It was like they'd been holding on to all this resentment, waiting for the perfect moment to throw it in my face. At this point, we were all yelling over each other and the kids were crying. It was a complete disaster. I was standing in my own doorway, being accused of being the worst brother on the planet, and all I could think was, how did it get to this? Finally, I'd had enough. I said, enough. This is my house and I've made my decision. I'm not changing my mind. Now, I think you need to leave. Jenny looked at me like she couldn't believe what she was hearing. She opened her mouth to say something but then just shook her head, grabbed the kids and stormed off. Alex followed, glaring at me like I was some kind of monster. As they walked away, I felt this strange mix of anger, guilt and relief. I knew I'd done the right thing by standing my ground, but it still hurt that it had come to this. I watched them get into their car and drive away, and for a moment I just stood there, wondering what would happen next. I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the end, that more drama was coming. And I was right. Later that night, my phone blew up with messages from family members. Apparently, Jenny had gone full-on drama mode and told everyone what happened, painting a picture that made it sound like I'd kicked them out onto the streets. Now my aunt, cousins, everyone were texting me, saying things like, "How could you do this to Jenny and the kids? You have a big house, and they just need a place to stay." It was like everyone had bought into this story that I was some kind of villain, hoarding my house while my sister suffered. No matter how many times I tried to explain my side, no one seemed to care. They all kept saying the same thing: family helps family. By the end of the night, I was exhausted. I had spent hours defending myself, but it felt like nobody was really listening. Jenny has successfully turned the entire family against me, and now I'm the villain in this situation. But here's the thing, I'm still not giving in. I won't let them guilt trip me into doing something that would make my life miserable. I know I made the right choice, even if no one else sees it that way. I just need to figure out how to deal with the fallout. Update 3: After the explosion within the family and the flood of messages from all directions, I was ready to just disconnect, turn off my phone, lock the doors, and wait for the chaos to pass. But of course, things didn't calm down. If anything, they escalated to a whole new level of absurdity. A few days went by without hearing directly from Jenny or Alex, and while that should have been a relief, it just made me feel like something bigger was coming. You know that eerie quiet before a major argument? That's exactly how it felt, like the calm before the storm. And as I expected, they weren't done with me yet. Sure enough, one morning I wake up to find a long post on Facebook that Jenny had written, and of course it's public for everyone to see. She goes off about how certain people in the family, clearly me, have abandoned her in her time of need, claiming she and her kids are practically homeless, and that all they wanted was a bit of support from someone who's in a better position. The post is filled with dramatic language, talking about how selfish some family members are, and how they don't understand the importance of helping others when things get tough. And unsurprisingly, the comment section is a complete disaster. People are chiming in, saying how heartless it is to turn away family, how they can't believe someone would do that to their own sister. As I scroll through it, my blood is boiling. None of these people know the full story, they're just eating up whatever Jenny is feeding them, and suddenly I'm the bad guy in the family. Even worse, extended family members are jumping into the comments. My aunt, who I haven't spoken to in years, says, "I always knew Brian was selfish like this is some known fact about me." My cousins are sharing the post, and soon enough, I'm getting notifications left and right, with people telling me to do the right thing and step up. At this point, I'm fuming. I try to calm down and think rationally, but the more I scroll, the angrier I get. It's like no matter how many times I've explained my side to people, Jenny's managed to twist the story so I look like the villain, and honestly, it's working. I'm losing this public battle. So I make a decision. I'm not usually one to air dirty laundry online, but this has gone too far. If Jenny's going to drag me through the mud on Facebook, I'm going to set the record straight. I type out a long post explaining my side of the story, how I offered to help Jenny and Alex in other ways, how they insisted on living rent-free for almost a year, and how that's just unreasonable. I mention how they've been irresponsible with their money and are now trying to guilt me into giving up my house. I explain that this whole situation is their fault, not mine. I hit post and wait. And of course the fireworks start immediately. People begin commenting on my post, some siding with me, saying it's not my responsibility to take in Jenny and her family. Others, though, are still backing Jenny, insisting I'm being too harsh, and that family should stick together no matter what. The whole thing turns into a full-blown argument in the comments, with people going back and forth, defending either side. Naturally, Jenny sees my post and flips out. She starts messaging me directly, calling me every name under the sun: selfish, heartless, arrogant. She says I'm destroying the family and that she can't believe I'd embarrass her like this in front of everyone. The irony of her saying that, after she publicly dragged me first, is almost too much. I try to keep my cool and respond calmly, explaining that she left me no choice. I had to defend myself after she blasted me on Facebook. But she's not hearing any of it. She's completely absorbed in her own version of events, convinced that she's the victim here. Eventually, she blocks me on Facebook like we're teenagers or something. Honestly, that's fine by me, less drama to deal with. Just when I think things might finally start to settle, I get a call from my dad. Here we go again. This time he's not yelling. His voice is low and serious, which, in some ways, is worse. He tells me he saw the whole thing on Facebook, and that he's upset I took the argument public. He's disappointed that I didn't handle it privately and is frustrated that the family is now divided. I can tell he's blaming me for making things worse, but I try to explain that I was backed into a corner, that Jenny started this whole thing by attacking me first. But no matter what I say, he's not happy. He starts talking about how I need to make things right, that family is the most important thing, and that it's not too late to offer Jenny and Alex a place to stay. He says if I do that, maybe things can go back to normal. That's when I finally snap. I tell him, Dad, I'm not doing it. I'm not going to let them live with me, and I'm done apologizing for it. I've done nothing wrong. They made their choices, and now they have to live with the consequences. I'm not their safety net, and it's not my job to fix their problems. There's a pause, and I can tell he's shocked. I don't usually stand up to him like this, but I'm done. I'm not going to let them guilt me into doing something I don't want to do just to keep the peace. Finally, he sighs and says, I hope you know what you're doing, Brian, before hanging up. After that, things went quiet. Jenny still had me blocked on social media, and my parents weren't really talking to me either. It feels like the whole family is stuck in this awkward, tense standoff, waiting for someone to make the next move. But here's the thing, I'm not making the next move. I've done my part. I've stood my ground, and I'm not backing down. It sucks that things had to turn out this way. I never wanted to fight with my family, but at the same time I know I made the right decision. I set a boundary, and I stuck to it, even when it felt like the whole world was against me. And maybe the family dynamic is messed up now. Maybe things won't go back to how they were. But honestly, I'm okay with that. At least I know I'm living on my terms in my own home, without anyone trying to guilt me into giving that up. And for me, that's worth all the drama in the world.